is a very large sector in terms of employment. And you are also India doesn't have a very good social security system. I mean, and high quality schooling. You got free medical. It is decent medical. When we say, you know what, we can go to a doctor anytime we want. Bear in mind, we're talking about the top 3% of India. The bottom of India, they can't afford good quality hospitals, and we don't have too many hospitals. I mean, we have, for instance, in most states in our country, we have just 110 beds per lakh. It's a very small number. Just keep that in mind. Anyway, so the issue is, one, from a theoretical point of view, the budget is actually increasing your tax liability. Second, it's discouraging you to save and build assets, and it's discouraging you to save and build a social security. In terms of capex, again, I think if you look at the numbers, and let's go back to last year. But then that included about a lakh to be given to the states as loans. But if you look at the final revised estimate, it's only 11% growth. That's just about managing inflation. If you look at this year's budget, again, it looks like a nice 30% growth. But if you look at it, that is, when you compare it from one budget to the other. But if you look at it from a revised FY23 budget, and if you look at the growth over there, or rather, the overall growth includes two factors again. One is state loans. Some of those loans will go into consumption because they haven't defined what the loan goes to. It's very broad. Now, replacing a car to me is not capex, it is consumption, right? So you effectively are giving a loan to a state to do various things which include consumption and hence not necessarily capex.
So
You
I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry, sir. There are a few people who wanted to talk about the FPO. Would it be okay if we come back to this? I'm so sorry, sir.
That's fine. That's fine. Cool. No problem. You want
Yeah.
me to talk, or somebody else wants to talk about it?
No, you could start about the FPO also. I mean, like,
What is
like
that? It's
it is.
cancer.
It is very surprising how they rolled it back at the last moment when the CFO is going around telling no, it's going to sail through. It's going to sail through, and in the last day they somehow 97% of it was subscribed, and then they're like, okay, we are going to roll it back, and what it means for the company. If somebody would like to chime in and say a bit about that, you could start, sir.
Okay. No. So I personally, okay. So there are two things, right? From a ethical point of view, I think it's a good thing that they have done it because obviously the institutional investors who put in a lot of money, at the end of the day, this question will go to their boards. So I think they would have put pressure and saying, listen, we can't be buying a stock which we haven't got ownership on at a significant premium. So I think from that standpoint of view, it's nice of them to roll it back. But on the negative side, of course, see, one needs to understand that Adani Group, as a because of the way it's structured for the last 5-6 years, has no free cash flow because of the capex that they're doing. And if you look at just FY22, the group net debt increased from 1,20,000 crores to 2,20,000 crores. That's a good 100,000 crores. So it's not, despite them generating EBITDA and operating cash flow, they still increase their debt by 1 lakh crores. That's a lot of money. And most banks tell you that while they haven't reached limits, it's not like they're not close to the limits. So, yes, clearly, this FPO not going through now, uh, I would say creates a fair bit of stress, and what I would watch is the reaction of the Adani bonds. And of course, there have been reactions by the second largest sovereign wealth fund in the world, Norges, which has said that they are going to cut exposure to Adani Group. Norges, by the way, is very important. What they typically do, a lot of other people follow. So it is something that you can't ignore. And so Adani is locked out of the foreign borrowing market for sure. It is locked out. The Indian banks will now be wary to increase their lines of credit. And the deleveraging that they wanted to do obviously looks like it's delayed. Clearly, I wouldn't say it's an entire concern on the banking system because, at the end of the day, even if I assume that most of their bonds are owned by the Indian banks through offshore and through their overseas entities, still, I wouldn't be too concerned about the banking system, especially the private sector banks. But yeah, remember that the private sector bank multiples and the PSU bank multiples had increased a lot, and the stocks were pretty much an overowned, right? Everybody was super bullish on banks, right? Because of that, everybody's owning banks, and with this negative news, bank stocks can sentimentally get hit. But so that's my view. But
And
it's
so,
not a it's not a risk to the banking system.
okay. Sushil sir, would you like to add to this?
No, I might just subtract from this.
Yes, sir. What would you like to say? What is your view on this, sir? And do you think the Credit Suisse not accepting the bonds as collateral was like nail in the coffin?
Akansha, I think some basic statements are needed. I may have some few things to say, and maybe you can slightly reserve the questions because otherwise it will become a very guided comment from me. Is it okay? I answer any questions a little later.
Yes, sir. Sure.
One suggestion, this good and bad reminds me of a movie called The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. If feasible, please edit the subject, the good, the bad, and the ugly, the way markets have had been today. Neither good or bad can describe the state of how we all behaved. Together we made the market. And this thing about Adani, neither good or bad describe it. It's gone past perhaps ugly. And if I can borrow from that movie, there are endless number of very, very memorable dialogues from this movie that apply to the markets regularly, providing some very deep lessons. One of them that I recall in the current situation, looking at the entire Adani chart since listing. There's one dialogue from this movie that applies here. There are two kinds of men. The one who carry a loaded gun, the other who keep digging for their gun. So this guy is right now looking like he's digging for his gun. The gun is gone, the mojo is gone. But if you look at the history of his stock price, not once, not twice, many times. From 8 rupees going to 115, coming back to 14, going back to 118, coming back to 18, and then from 300 getting back to 150. So abhi to Adani sirf 98 hua hai in this current fall. Adani se 98. Adani se abhi khali 98 hua hai. But this guy has gone through severe, more severe crashes, and still this bubble has kept on multiplying. So while he's right now looking like a guy digging for his gun, he's played this deception too many times, whether the crash is the reality or the bubble is the reality. I think it's too soon. For me, this kind of a stock will always be beyond intellect. No doubt, markets require every trader to suspend intellect beyond a point by reclaiming their innocence, operate within certain definable parameters, triggers, model, whatever. But there is a difference between reclaiming your innocence by ignoring some things that are irrelevant, and there's a huge difference between this state of maturity and being really ignorant. So the way Adani has played out, the script of the Adani story that has played out. Give me a second, I'll just be back.
All right, sir. Nilesh, sir, would you like to say something?
I'll give it a pass. Everybody has spoken so much on Adani, and the picture is out. So I'll give it a pass. Yeah, so 52-week low is 1550 odd. So I think we can see that level. But it has been the sentiment spoiler. And going ahead, I think it should be out of the Nifty, Bank Nifty, Nifty indices. And
I'm sorry, Akanksha. I'll join you back. I'm just hopping on to Republic discussing Adani at 11 o'clock. Allow me to please go to that show, and I'll come back to your chat after that.
Okay, sir.
Hope that's okay.
All right, sir.
Hello?
Akanksha, may I add a contrarian view on Adani? Not the SQ
Yes.
part.
Yes,
So,
sir. Once
I mean-
Nilesh sir completes, you can add, sir.
yeah. So, see, we have two good companies out there from the Adani basket. One is ACC and one is Ambuja. I think one should look at these assets for decent long-term investment. Whenever we are getting at a deep bargain or a basket, I think we should look at these asset classes, because what I can understand, JSW was one of the second largest bidder, and he will come in the race now to acquire these assets. This is my own perception. So since Adani FPO has sailed out, or they have bailed out the investor, they have returned back the money. That's a very good point from their end. But yeah, there has been damage done, and from this damage, I think the other players or other corporate houses will take up as a bargain the fallen assets.
All right, sir. Karthik, sir, what were you adding?
I would like to take a contrarian view. If they survive the current cash squeeze, this budget itself gives me an incentive to perhaps invest in every Adani company once the fall stops. Let me start. 10,000 crores for biogas plant. Guess which is the only company who started doing major biogas initiative and has been awarded in the last 6 months? And who's got 10 circles where CBG is going to be, compressed biogas is going to be mixed with natural gas, which has got an excise waiver of Adani. Waste management. Yes, ACC Ambuja is a good company, but they just launched GeoClean. Guess what government said today? Mangroves cleaning, waste body, water bodies cleaning, major budget allocation. Guess who's got the best technology to do it? I'm not talking about crony capitalism. I'm saying, for whatever reason, the guy before the budget is announced has the best technology available on merit to claim it. Right? Third, coastal shipping. Yes, there is debt, but most of his ports are ready. Coastal shipping, major allocation to support. Guess from where when we have power shortages and coal shortages, rake shortages this summer, which ports are going to be utilized in Gati Shakti for shipping? The allocation is there. Battery storage, 1.5 years ago, Anil started battery storage services. There's a major announcement on battery storage, Adani Enterprises. Government infra spend. They announced this year they're going to, I think Adani had announced they're going to go big way in roads this year. And cement is going to all get internally utilized. So it's the big captive investor. And
All right.
last is green hydrogen. The green hydrogen, another major piece. Again, Adani is one of the major players. So that's what I have to add. If you have that many cash flows coming in, guys, do you even need FPO money or something coming in later? Everything will fall in place if they survive the current liquidity crash.
Okay, sir. I think Nilesh sir has a point.
Mr. Karthik, see, nothing against your contrarian view. So I already mentioned about Ambuja and ACC, they're good assets. But the damage done on the goodwill and the brand itself has been very, very powerful. Okay. And coming the Lok Sabha budget in 2024, I think Adani Group will not, or neither government will not do any kind of a silly mistake to give him any kind of more projects or support him or something like this. So my personal take is that he should go very very silent and work very silently and come back if he is powerful. तो my whole take on this is this, यार आप शांत हो जाओ और आप आपका जो whatever you have to prove it on records. So if the balance sheet is nice enough, people will merit him, and again they will give him money. So
So
Yeah,
I
just one
think,
point.
go ahead.
Yeah, so the only thing, Karthik, you might be right. The only issue that Adani is facing today is that the businesses, consolidated businesses, are not generating cash flow. They require more and more debt. And the precise reason why they wanted to raise this capital was to delever itself. If you can't delever yourself with equity, you will not get more debt. If you don't get more debt, you might be awarded a lot of these businesses, but how will you invest in it? So I think I'm not disputing what you say, but I also think that if you look at valuations, even at this moment of time, you would have to bet on near clockwork precision, execution on all businesses for the next 10 years or 15 years just to justify the current valuations. So, I'm just saying that just keep that in mind. I mean, I agree with you that, for instance, Coal India can easily supply the coal that we require. We don't need to really, import coal. But yeah, who benefited from coal imports? The ports, which ports were used, and where the coal was imported from. How does the Australian FTA help Adani? Clearly, I agree with everything that you say, but the issue is cash flows for the business and deleveraging, because banks generally have to try and maintain. Now, the spotlight is on all the banks, so they will, as a banker, you're not going to get an extra bonus for giving more credit to Adani. You might get a rap on your knuckles if you are going to go ahead and say, I'm going to give more loans to Adani. Remember that.
So I think there are two speakers whose hands are up, Yash and Mr. BSE, Chetan sir. Yash sir, would you like to start first?
Akansha, I think Anandji is also there. If you
Okay,
can just
I'll
put
send
it.
him a request.
Hello. Hello.
Yes, yes, we can hear you.
No, that wasn't me, Akansha. That was someone else.
All right, so Anand sir.
Just one thing I wanted to tell you guys before you speak, just one thing. From a technical point of view, the entire hedge fund community is short Adani. So if and some of them would have probably applied in the FPO. Now that the stock is not coming, they might actually have to unwind their shorts. So it could be a contra. Just thought I'd let you know.
No, Fact Finder. I would disagree with you. Now, this is all the fallout of the Hindenburg shot. See, Hindenburg is not just a research organization; it is also a trade. They also trade actively, so they already have their positions in the game. And most of the time, Hindenburg never does anything with very little research. So the research this time seems to be much more deeper. And there was some gentleman who was speaking before who was talking pro Adani. Adani would get this, Adani would get that. See, in a way, you are subtly proving that Adani is investing in all these areas. He has already got all of this. And then today in the budget, they speak about the mangroves and this and that. In a subtle way, you are actually hinting or you're actually confirming that there is something hand in glove going on here. Now, all this will not be taken so lightly by the international community, and FPO being cancelled here, and the money which is already received in escrow being returned, it is going to look like, I mean, it's going to send a very bad image, and this would actually be a black mark on Indian corporate history. So watch out. There could be a lot of repercussions to these actions. Now, Adani is actually now is putting the name of India and the entire country's economy at ransom, and this is what they did even when they filed a report to their rebuttal to Hindenburg's report. They had kept the Indian flag along with it. It was never done before. No corporate entity ever used an attack on them and equated it to an attack on a nation. Now, there's quite a lot of things which have not gone on well in the international community from whatever reports I am getting from across the globe. So the repercussions are quite going to be deep and quite bad.
Agreed, sir.
So I think Yash would like to add to this point. Yash, could you speak?
Yes. Thank you, Akansha. First off, you are a kind person and you run these spaces,